It really did all start with a phone call. So, backing up almost 6.5, 7 years, I had just sold my first company in the healthcare services space. Took my wife and our two daughters camping for the weekend, and I'd had enough kind of mental break during the due diligence period that I was ready to start something new. And so I'm at a blank desk. I know that I want to do accounting. I know that e-commerce is the space that I want to kind of lean into as a vertical. And I made a first phone call. And that first phone call was to my guest on today's episode of Return on Podcast, Scott Scharf. I just Googled who are the guys doing accounting in the e-commerce space. And of course, you couldn't Google that without finding the granddaddy of them all, Catching Clouds. Scott and Patty have been doing this for a long time. They've since kind of sold their company and rolled into another larger accounting firm called Acuity. And what I find fascinating about Scott is he's a wealth of information. He's kind of an IT guy turning his nerd brain on this Amazon data problem that we all wrestle with. And so in today's conversation, we're going to talk about some of the things that if let's say you're, just becoming a 7-figure seller and you're a solopreneur and you're trying to figure out what are the next steps to professionalizing my operation. We're going to talk about that for a few minutes in this interview. And then what if you're a larger brand? What if you've been doing this for a while? Maybe you're 5 million, 10 million plus in revenue per year, and you're still managing your inventory with a spreadsheet and a prayer. What does it look like for that brand owner, CEO to take the next steps to gain a greater handle on his or her business? And I think Scott's the right guy to talk about this because he's so well versed in the technology that's kind of surrounding these inventory challenges. All around, just a great guy. I think you're going to enjoy this interview with Scott Scharf from Scharf Consulting. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best e-com CEOs. It's time for Return on Podcast with me, Tyler Jefcoat. All right, guys, welcome to today's episode of Return on Podcast. And guys, this is a treat today. I mean, it really did all start with a phone call at the beginning of 2018. I had just sold my first business and I knew enough to know I didn't know what the hell I was doing in this business, the Amazon accounting business. And so my first phone call was to the gentleman you see on the screen right now, Scott Scharf. Bro, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. It's a nice day in Colorado.
There he goes. It's a pretty nice day in Georgia, although we're starting. Actually, Scott, let me say this real quick. This will kind of help you guys figure out exactly what week we're recording this as you're hearing this. But I was in Omaha this past weekend at the Berkshire Hathaway investment event. Never done it. How many more years are we going to get, Warren Buffett around? Let's go see what this guy's all about. And I got off the plane in Atlanta, and the humidity in Atlanta right now just hits you like a slap in the face. And so it's not quite as nice here as it is in Denver, but I'm grateful to have you joining the show here. Scott and I have a lot in common. We've both been in this same kind of back office support e-commerce brands as they scale business, in the accounting world, and now you, Scott, in the kind of consulting world. And so but before we dive into how to do that, how to optimize your business, give us a little bit of your journey. I know it, but not everyone else does. How did you get from where you were to where you are?
Yeah. So it all comes down to I married well. Okay. I just always have to start that I married well. Turns out Patty Scharf, my wife, was actually getting her MBA and master's in accounting when we started dating. We knew each other in college. So it all starts there. I'm a long time, decades and decades, IT consultant. And I had gone through my consulting practice. I was running a national practice. I was doing product management. Then I worked for a global multinational. Okay. So in this world, I still am an expert in audio, video, web conferencing, from everything from global multinationals down to individuals. So me doing video interactions, webcasts, all these things is all kind of there. But I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. Patty went to a conference, a SleaderCon, way back when, I think in 2010, called me after every session. Oh my God, the web is here. We got to do something. If I do something, can we do it? Knowing that change happens very slowly. And I said, sure. And so we both started working on what business are we going to run? What can we do together? Because we're both entrepreneurs. And so in 2011, we started Catching Clouds. So to do cloud accounting, it was on zero within weeks of when it launched in the US. And we started putting it together, and she still had a tax practice and I still had my global multinational job working out of the same office because audio, video, web conferencing. And we got going. And then our first client was an Amazon seller. So January of 2012, our first client was an Amazon seller, and I got in, and we always knew we were going to pick a niche. Then we got another Amazon seller, and then we got a local chamber of commerce and a few other people. And then after a year, we got rid of anybody that wasn't e-commerce. And then the same day she sold her tax practice, I got called and got laid off from my global multinational job. And we both went, well, it looks like this is what we're doing. And then we had a good 4 or 5 years before any other accountant had figured out e-commerce or the cloud, and QBO wasn't a thing and everything else. And so we had this nice runway of time where we really dug in and became the experts. I became an expert on cloud inventory, ERP solutions, and the tech stack for the e-commerce businesses. I became an expert in sales tax for e-commerce business, what I'm quickly trying to forget. Won't talk about much anymore. And then my wife and I found out we just had a blast being entrepreneurs together, building a business. And along the way, we built relationships with the vendors. We were on Xero's Partner Advisory Council and Zen Payroll, which became Gusto's Partner Advisory, and many, many, many others. And I started actively working with a wide range of the SaaS providers in this space. But better yet, we're going to Sleater Cons and then Xero Cons and QB Connects, and just the friends and peers that we've made throughout the years, either accountants that are like, hey, I do this, but I have 2 clients that are doing e-commerce. What do I do? And we've always been happy to do those. And we still have the 100+ videos on the YouTube channel. Patty's now adding a new one every week on e-commerce because we've always wanted to help and just be part of the community. And so now 12 years later, I've talked to probably over 4,000 sellers. I probably talk to a seller almost every day these days about their business challenges and everything else. And I've always taken a consultative approach to all of that. And then in 2021, we made it through COVID, and then we got hammered by the Great Resignation. We merged with Acuity in Georgia in 2021 as owners and executives. Patty is still there, but last spring, almost this time last year, I decided to leave to get back to consulting. Okay. Because all of a sudden I was the CTO of a larger 100+ person accounting firm. And I went, wait a minute, this is not the same thing. But my journey really has been entrepreneurial, picking up friends, peers, people I can collaborate throughout that whole time. But always with a focus on how do we help these amazing entrepreneurs that take risks, that are going into this crazy thing that's e-commerce, that has long legs, it's going to last, it's very dynamic and constantly changing. And we're these amazing entrepreneurs. How can we help them with the challenges either around accounting or, in my case, technology and accounting?
Totally makes sense. And it is amazing. By the way, I'm grateful to have you in the space, Scott, because I think having a real kind of true IT nerd, and I can, speaking from the perspective as a partner, and I've been in, some of those same rooms with you at either QB Connect or maybe like a, A2X conference or something like that. Like, you have an unusual level of depth of understanding of how these tools work. And that is a service to other guys like that are out there. I'm like, because I can call you and be like, why isn't this tool working? And you're like, actually, here's why. And they're working on it. And you probably need to pick another one for right now. And so I guess along those lines, so starting to pick a little bit at your expertise. So I am seeing a wave of need within the Amazon and e-commerce brand building space of needing to professionalize. That's kind of the big catchphrase. We got to professionalize these businesses. We no longer can get away with kind of a spreadsheet and a prayer. We no longer can get away with, I'll manage that number later. I'll manage that inventory later. I'm going to have to do it now because there's pressure on these businesses. And I guess my question for you is, like, what are you seeing that are kind of the basics, the A, B, and C of getting your business from, oh boy, I built a brand by myself that has some legs now, to I'm going to become a company? Like, what are the kinds of problems that those guys are solving?
Yeah. That's the piece. You change from, hey, I made this entrepreneurial risk, to, wait, this is a business and I have to treat it like a business. And these people are growing up and maturing as entrepreneurs. And the large majority of these e-commerce businesses it's their first business. Okay. They haven't built and crashed or built and sold multiple businesses. There are people out there that have done that. There are people that are serial entrepreneurs and go, oh, now I'm going to do an e-commerce business. And these people are starting from scratch and they do the basics. The thing about e-commerce is there's so many areas that you have to be an expertise in. And I fully believe that entrepreneurs should wear every hat in the business enough so that they understand it enough to know how it fits in their business and then how to outsource it. Whether you hire and staff that position, you outsource to an accounting firm like yours, or you do, what do you do on all these different things? And now they're like, wait, I'm going to take a step back and how do I build this business? And of course, you and I are big believers in EOS. The entrepreneurial operating system just provides that framework. Is one of the key things that I push on people. I'm not an EOS implementer, but I do talk about the pros and cons because it provides a framework for businesses to make changes in their business, to say, I'm here today, I want to be here in a year or two, and it provides that framework, okay? And that's one of the key things, because where I come in is people are having trouble making changes in their business because they're playing whack-a-mole with, oh, now I've got to set up a TikTok shop. Okay, great. Okay, next month I'm going to do this. Oh, wait, Meta just changed the algorithm. I need to do this. Or there's a global pandemic, or there's a supply chain issue, or a port with all of your products on a ship gets stuck in the middle of a port, or they're stuck in Panama, or now you have to worry about the Red Sea. There's all these different things, and that being able to step back and work on your business instead of in your business is really where, I see these people having challenges. And then most of these entrepreneurs are amazing. They're risk takers. A lot of times they're either creative. Okay. So they work on marketing campaigns. They've got a great voice and a great story. They're passionate about their products, whether it's a skiing product or a baby product or whatever else. Or they just really like having a team and being an entrepreneur. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you've got all these different things. What I don't list in there are people that are either IT, project management people that know how to build a multi-phase program to make fundamental changes in their business, whether that's going about outsourcing their accounting or implementing the right operational setup with processes, live processes, not just documents that no one ever looks at again, the right tech stack that doesn't get out of control and you're just buying tools and whatever else. And then the challenge is these businesses are moving so fast, they don't have time to really do the due diligence on any one thing. They get a couple good recommendations and they go with it. And sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong, and then they have to pivot. And then there's always some sort of fire to put out. And really my focus is to help them deal with those challenges and make those changes in the business where they don't have expertise or capacity, the time to do all of that, so they can make the right decisions and invest the right time and effort and cost to build the infrastructure around the business itself, their vision and mission, EOS, and then the right tech stack and the right team and process to turn it into an engine that actually functions as a business that they can step out of and go on vacation or meets whatever goals they have.
So let's make this practical with 2 case studies. So I was talking to one of our clients, a friend of mine, Andrew. Shout out to Andrew. I think he listens to the show yesterday. And he very much fits into the kind of solopreneur plus model. Has just put together his first accountability chart, just finished reading EOS Traction by Gino Wickman, which that's the book we're referencing. And so I'm going to get this practical. We'll talk about the bigger outfit and some of the guys you've worked with recently here in a minute. But if you're in Andrew's shoes right now, you just mentioned the whack-a-mole. There's 1,000 different things I could try to whack. And I may or may not have the budget to bring on someone like a Scott Scharf to do this project management for me. What would be the first maybe 1 or 2 things that if you're talking to Andrew, thriving Amazon Plus brand, 7 figures, really nice model, but is overwhelmed. He's at the point where he's juggling one too many plates.
Yeah.
Where would you start if you're that? Like I'm imagining a $2 million Amazon seller who's quit the day job a year and a half ago and is now realizing I've got some things. I got to start somewhere. Like where does the Andrew of the world start?
Yeah. So it's being very clear using EOS, what your longer term goals are, but then writing down what they're doing in the business versus on the business and being clear about those 2 things. And then to start outsourcing those things which can be staff and hiring. It can be an offshore virtual assistant or whatever else. Those things that are eating up the time that aren't the value for your time. So just easy math. Everybody wants to bring in, let's say 400K a year. That's entrepreneurs this year. I want to do 400K, whether it's salary or just distributions, whatever. Okay. That's $200 an hour. Easy math. Some of the easiest math is that's $200 an hour. If you're doing anything that's less than $200 an hour, you are losing the difference if you're doing it yourself. Okay. So what I would do is look at those things and go, what are those low value things that I can do? And you're going from easy things. There are a range of solid, highly qualified offshore teams that focus on Amazon that will do the listing, will do the work. Go for those smaller things. It's challenging. Everybody wants that clone, that entrepreneurial executive assistant piece. And you can read another book called Virtual Freedom. And it's really only the first few chapters that really apply, that you truly can't clone yourself. Okay. But they want to. Okay. So what you want is an integrator. If they're really that small, I got lucky that I already married to the ultimate integrator. I'm like mostly vision and a teeny bit of detail and integrator. She is mostly integrator, some solid chunk, and there's some good overlap there. But the idea is you want to start offloading those things, and you're not signing a 5-year contract. You're going to say, okay, for the 6 months, I'm going to outsource this. I'm going to outsource this. If you find an amazing person offshore, or the neighbor kid, your own kid, whatever, then you can give them more and more responsibility and evolve it. But you need to get those things off of your plate. Okay. So even though I'm all about technology, I'm an IT geek, you can tell, between Lord of the Rings and Star Wars stuff behind me, but you still need some humans to manage it, no matter much technology. And then you want to start adding in the right tools. I would say starting with a dashboard tool that tells you where you are. Okay. Of course, solid financials. Okay. Actual solid financial, a P&L and a balance sheet. Then a dashboard to tell you where that tends to be what people add 2 or 3 years later, and they have no insight and they're basically flying blind, where they're just looking at, their bank balance or their revenue or one KPI. Everything's run off ROAS. Okay. You're like, and so you need a couple guides to look at it. You can't look at 20 things in a super complex dashboard. And then look at what technology would optimize your business. And my view is look at where you are financially, what you're paying for that person, that offshore person that's taking care of work. And then you set a budget. And let's say early on, it's $300 or $500 a month for tools. Pay that much. If you get rid of a tool and drop to $300, go find another tool for $200 a month that magnifies what you do. And then push it until you hit a wall. And your wall is going to either be, I've grown to another level. Okay, I need to hire one or a few more people, or I need to implement more technology or optimize the technology, and just keep going through that process. But for people that go too high, poor companies that are under 30 million, and I'm helping multiple companies move off of NetSuite, but a company that was about $1 million and somebody went, go with NetSuite, and it's crushing them. Okay. Financially, it is just crushing them financially, and it's just too big and it's too much work. So start small and big there. But my piece would be, look in and on what you're doing in the business. And if you're working in the business, start delegating it. Even if it's fun for you, you have to start getting those things off so you can work on the business so that you can go and meet those goals and make the bigger changes.
I'll mention one more book. You mentioned, what was the one you mentioned about?
Virtual Freedom. I can't remember who writes it. I've read it a long time ago.
Google Virtual Freedom. I haven't read that one. That's one that if Scott recommends it, I would definitely read it. The other one that's really changed my life, Scott, over the last year and a half or so was Dan Martell wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time.
Oh, yeah.
And he walks through a similar kind of thought matrix. Again, I'm channeling, my buddy Andrew here. And actually, Andrew and I had this conversation yesterday where I'm like, hey, man, here's what Dan says. Make a list of all the junk you do. For that, not exhaustive, but like, the 20 or 30 things that occupy your energy and time.
Yeah.
And then go through that list, and you're going to rank the list twice. The first time you're going to I personally like a color code. I make it green if it gives me energy. I make it orange if it drains my energy. I leave it blank if it's kind of like neutral. And I'm going to go through it a second time. I'm going to use the classic like Google pricing. Like if you look at a restaurant on Google, it'll have a $1 sign, $2 signs, $3 signs, or 4. It's subjective. It's not precise, but I want to kind of estimate how much financial resources will be required to pay somebody else to do that particular task. And to your point, Scott, you kind of turn that list into a simple quadrant. And that matrix gives you a clear job description for the things that are sapping your energy and also, coincidentally are lower value in terms of what you would have to pay someone to do it. And my job and your job, Scott, and whoever's listening to this, is to offload that pile of things yesterday. You've got to free up your energy so that you can put more of it into those $200 an hour kind of task like you were mentioning.
Yeah. I agree. And you have to watch out. I mean, there's only so much, we all know from dieting or whatever else, there's only so much willpower that you can put into it. And that if you don't build it into a system that operates, that there's consistent standards, because if you're doing something different every day. So I love building new processes and everything else, which is fun. And I love diving into really complex situations and pulling it all together and rationalizing it. But it's always about how can I get this to standard so it's repeatable, so it's managed, so it's simplified. One of the biggest challenges I see are people making their businesses too complex, okay, and not taking the time to simplify things for themselves and for everybody else. I mean, I'm talking to people that are stuck in the entrepreneurial trap where they're both the best and worst boss they've ever had. They're their own boss, okay, ignoring being married and having somebody who wears the pants in the family. But the other piece is then they're stuck in the entrepreneurial trap where they're working 80 to 100 hours a week. They're the worst boss they ever have. They can't go on vacation.
Right.
They can't take off time. The whole reason they became an entrepreneur was to be their own boss and have choice. They want to be able to choose what they do with their time, and they can't coach their kids' soccer team because that's when all the shipments show up and when FedEx and UPS, and they have to be there, but they think they have to be there. And a lot of the focus, one of my key things is to look at those things and help people get the perspective, because it's hard when you're in the middle of all of it. Ooh, I do have the favorite book I've read and I read every day. We'll talk about a bunch of books. It's called The Daily Stoic. It's a daily comment. It's got just amazing advice. It's just a little bit of trickle, and I'm loving it. So every day it's got a day. It's set specific. You're supposed to read it on the day the date that it has. It's Marcus Aurelius, and just amazing insight to tell you you're not in control of anything. Like the only thing in your own body you can really control maybe is your breath. And if you hold it too long, you pass out and then you start breathing again. Okay. So it's accepting that as an entrepreneur, we're talking mindset and stuff, is really kind of the big changes there. But once you've got that down, really help people, you can make those choices and you can get back to the point where you feel like you're in control. You'll sleep better, and then you can work the number of hours, whether that's you want to work 50 hours a week, but you're choosing. You have some weeks that peak and come down, but that you truly can get to the point where, hey, I did this because I'm going to take a 2-month road trip in an RV with my family every summer while my kids are, just turned double digits. Like if that's one of your goals, these are the kind of things you talk about, this becoming a maturing more business owner and entrepreneur, get you to do those things that you care about now, not, hey, I've got a ton of money in retirement 20 years from now.
Right. So let's go upstream a little bit. So we talked about the kind of avatar equals Andrew. I've gone from solopreneur to kind of, okay, I've got my EA now, offshore, onshore. I've delegated the tasks that are sucking the energy out of my life. And I have committed with all of my energy to never getting NetSuite as my accounting software until I'm at least 80 million a year in revenue. And I have a full-time staff doing it with me. I'm there. Talk to me about some of the larger brands that you've worked with. And I guess it's the same question. Like, what are the things you're seeing that give them unlock the most value for your $10, $15 million brand? And how are you helping them? I don't know if you have a case study, but like, how are you helping them unlock that value?
Yeah. Assuming you've outsourced your accounting and you have a handle on your financials. Okay. So that's key, but this ties to it. It's operational efficiency. Okay. You're a shipping company. You're not going to be an Amazon that can deliver stuff the next day. Okay. But that is the area where I see so many businesses get tripped up, because there's so much complexity in purchasing product and receiving product. And then you've got to sell product and market product, and all these things happen. And any friction, sand in the gears, and anywhere in this situation blocks things. Okay. And a lot of companies can go and get to maybe up to 5 million on spreadsheets. Okay. So I'm happy to help people that have efficient spreadsheets that will get them to a certain point, but somewhere around 1 to 2 million, you have to seriously consider implementing the right cloud inventory management system. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you get that wrong, it just slows your business down, and you don't have standards. And that's where I spend a huge amount of my time. Is I don't trust my accounting numbers because they're getting bad costs, COGS, and inventory value numbers because their operations are broken. Okay. Or you have to, we talked earlier on, you said at the beginning, everybody's having challenge. I mean, nobody says the word recession, but every e-commerce seller I know is thinking we're in a recession, is looking at cutting costs on tech stack and optimizing every piece of their business. Okay. You have to. And that includes saving money on inbound shipments, buying the exact right amount of product. Okay, great. You've already assumed you sell, alien widgets. Okay. I don't know. Just picking something. I know nobody does it, but you've got all these widgets. Okay. Yeah. Then you go, okay, I'm already in that. I've got a market. I'm selling them on these multiple channels. Okay. How much am I selling? How much do I need to keep in stock so I have the right number of inventory turns, so I don't have too much cash stuck in inventory? Okay. Mm-hmm. That I have cash flow to keep the business happy and pay payroll and all those things. And how do I not buy too few so I run out of stock and I lose rankings and I don't make the money I have? Where's that magical piece that's there? Okay. So you have to have the processes to do those things. And then as soon as you do that, then you have to execute. It's all about execution. Purchasing from the right vendor, so the products show on time, they flow through, and that you know where your products are and where you want them to be in your own warehouse, your 3PL, in a staging warehouse for Amazon, in the new Amazon AWD warehouses, in FBA. Where do you have all of those things, and how can you make sure you can move them around effectively, assuming you've got them somewhere, in your country kind of piece. And that comes down to having the right tool, and it's more important on who implements it than who does it. This is not a DIY process. It's very complex. There's some core fundamentals to e-commerce businesses, but everybody's a little bit different. I do a little B2B. I do a little bit of this. I do a little of that. I do fair. I do that. Like there's some pure Amazon, they move it, but most businesses understand that you're putting all of your eggs in the Amazon basket, and you have to have some other way of generating revenue and, not be dependent on there. And then it comes down to, in my view, I push a lot, is process. And that's live processes. That is, here is how we create a purchase order, and we actually check a checklist off every time so that everybody in the business does it the same. Okay. This is how we receive inventory, and here's how we check those things, including the 3 things you have to do as it happens through a crazy month that feed over to the accountants so the data's right for them to get it. It includes all those different things. I personally have been using a tool called Process Street, process.st, that I think is phenomenal. You can do it in tools. ClickUp seems to have taken e-commerce businesses by storm. Its tax management is okay. Notion's okay. But when it comes to those live processes that have how to do it, and then the checkoff to do it, and then the ability to automate those and make those live so that technology is doing the work where it's possible, it's kind of the right tool implemented properly. A lot of sellers I talk to that I work with might have a tool that works for them, because my first goal is to make what they have work better. A lot of it is build a process, even around a tool that's not necessarily fundamentally wrong or too expensive like NetSuite, but you can build process around either spreadsheets or a slightly wrong tool if it's not fundamentally wrong, and solve it, because then you can build process, and then you can implement automation so that you can get around these workarounds that it works. But sometimes you have Billy Bob knows one fix, Mary Jane knows another, and it gets different the same way. And you get to the end of the month, none of your cost numbers match. It doesn't match your accounting, and you lost 10 cases or 3 pallets of product. So it's really that piece, but it all kind of flows back together into the accounting, because you need that to come back and say, hey, you made more money, you lost money, you had inventory disappear. You need to have that cycle of these crazy things happen every day, every week, every month. And then you have a process to reconcile both your inventory and operations and look to see, can you optimize it or anything going on that relate to your financing to be a healthy business?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to rephrase what I think I heard you say there in the form of a quick analogy, and I'd love to get your comment on this. So this is a lot like piloting a ship, a boat. Think about the boat. If we're in a boat with unlimited fuel in the middle of an ocean with no coast or rocks or icebergs or islands, we don't have to be real good at driving that boat. But if we're trying to navigate the Suez Canal, as we had some interesting opportunities years ago, our navigation has to be extremely precise because our margin for error is really small. And so when you think about managing inventory, and this is the kind of the tricky, I can't afford to fall in either ditch that Scott just mentioned. If I have too much inventory, I run out of cash, and the cost of capital right now is really high. Yep. And so the consequences of running out of cash are death. That's not good. We don't want that. The consequences of being out of inventory is there's an opportunity cost where we don't get to make the sales. I'll give you a great example. I was talking to a client of mine the other day who didn't get the order they wanted to make for Q4. And this is a $400,000 inventory order, would have represented $2 million in sales. And it really sank their entire year because they didn't have the opportunity to make that money. And so my point is that the slimmer your margins are, the better your navigation technology, your feedback loops, your data has to be so that you can navigate. And guess what, guys? We're in a current ecosystem where you have to be able to navigate precisely. You're not in a John boat anymore. You're in $1 million business and you're trying to get through the Suez Canal. And Scott, to your point, I think we have to have a process in place where data can be gathered with fidelity. You're talking about those numbers have to be accurate. And those numbers have to be presented in a way that helps us make the right turns, the right adjustments to our course. And we can't crash. We can't run out of money. We can't run out of inventory. And I mean, practically speaking, I hear you saying that probably means as we get larger, implementing some kind of an IMS, inventory management system. And that's really scary because you actually mentioned this before we hit record on this, like the amount of wasted resources, the sunk cost that goes into if you guys are in any kind of a Discord channel or a Facebook group with other Amazon sellers, what you hear constantly is, oh my God, I wasted $40K hiring this guy and implementing this system. And I just can't believe I didn't get any value. And I dumped it and I'm so pissed off. That is actually probably more common than the, yay, I'm so happy. This is going great. And maybe my question for you here, Scott, is what's the difference? What's the delta between the guy who's like in the message boards bitching and moaning because he's happy and the guy who's like, okay, maybe it's not yay, maybe it's not a hallelujah, but I'm really happy with the way my system has evolved. Like what do you feel like is the difference in the way those two guys approach this problem?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you just have to accept going in as an entrepreneur, you are going to lose money. You are going to make mistakes that cost you more money than you ever expected. But how do you avoid those? How do you avoid the big icebergs that are going to take you under versus you're just going to hit little ones and have to fix the paint and stuff? Right. So the challenge is it's what I see is that people aren't sitting down and truly writing down their requirements, the good things they want to have happen, the bad things that have happened. I've talked to people that have gone through 3 or 4 IMS platforms. Okay. And then, and we talked about time earlier. You're paying whack-a-mole with so many things. Do you truly have enough time to do the due diligence? But if you want to get this right, you have to write those requirements down and really in a detailed way, map out how your business runs and what's the optimal output. What are those fundamentals? What are the things you need? And you need to rank those things. Okay. Because I've talked to sellers and their whole team, and they spent a month demoing 12 different solutions. They didn't take any notes. They didn't have a spreadsheet comparing them. And all they remembered was the last one they looked at. Okay. They didn't have a specific goal. That is the main goal. And where I provide a lot of the value is to pull that focus in, that investment up front in your time or in a consultant or whatever else, to get that. And then you want to do the exact same due diligence on who's going to implement it, who's going to be your consultant beyond the vendor that you can turn to when you're just in support mode with the vendor. Okay. And then what are all of those things? And then really focusing in and going, well, these are my top 5 things it has to have. This product has to do variant SKUs. If you sell and have a master SKU and then sell the same product with multiple ASINs on Amazon, and then a different SKU on Faire and a different SKU on Shopify and a different SKU on Walmart, for whatever reasons you run your business that way, and the product that you and the tool you pick doesn't do that. I mean, I helped a seller that lost about $80,000 on the wrong, thinking he should jump to where he was to an ERP instead of QBO 0 and an IMS that will get them triple, quadruple their revenue size before they have to go to some other larger tool, because they didn't focus in on those things, and they didn't focus and make sure that you said no to everything, and that you either have to keep saying no until you're sure, and there's not going to be a perfect solution. And then you need to understand it meets 80% of my requirements. I'm going to do it. You're going to pay someone a reasonable amount. The numbers some of the IMS implementers are quoting are double what I think they should be. Like over $20K for an implementation is just more than somebody should spend. You either break it up into chunks or whatever else. But you need to make sure you've done a comparison matrix. Run it by your accountant. Your accountant, they're detail oriented. Tell them they're reconciling it and have them throw numbers at it. Like, okay, what would you rank each of these features? Then how would you balance that and do something to kind of get the emotion out of it? And keep in mind, if you pick the lower cost tool, even though you like the other one that's 25% more, you're going to spend 300% more on 3 other tools to fill the gap of that first tool. Okay. But the most expensive tool isn't necessarily always the best either. So I really, you just have to stop and make sure you're doing your due diligence and take the time and vet multiple apps and do the demos in a critical way, and then vet who's going to implement it. Talk to the actual human. Are they going to come on site? What are they going to do to figure that out? And those 2 things will get you that much closer. Then, of course, everything is mindset to the owner. You are 100% responsible for the success of any outsourced project, tool implementation. If you can't focus on it enough to follow it through until it's done, you can't hand it off at 75%, because that last 25% will blow up on you. You're 100% responsible. You hold your team, yourself first, then your team, then any outsourcers accountable. If they say they're going to do 3 things by Friday and they haven't done them, you have a meeting and go, why haven't you done this? Okay. Instead of, well, I'll give you another week. I'll give you another week. It's some of those fundamental things are really the difference to getting the right tool. You have to say, this is your goal in EOS speak, and it's going to take you a quarter, and you're going to take the full quarter, and then you're going to make the decision, and then you're going to put the time and effort and money into it to make sure it's successful.
Yeah, I think you said that really well there at the end. This is a normally for most of the clients we serve, this is a multi-quarter project. So kind of reset your expectations, friends. Like if you do this right, and by the way, doing it right might mean hiring a guy like Scott Scharf to come in and do it for you, because they can really help. And Scott can't do it for you, but I think in terms of I'm overwhelmed, I don't have the capacity, I'm only going to be able to half-ass this if it's me, then it's better to pay someone who knows what they're doing than it is to get $30,000 into a project and realize that you blew it. But that's 1 quarter, is just the go, no go on the right tool after we've asked all the questions. Because guess what? You're going to make a wish list of the 35 things you want. And if you're looking for somebody to check off all 35 boxes, they're always going to recommend a full ERP with a custom integration and custom apps built onto it. But as Scott said, and if you didn't catch that, rewind and listen to that part, what he just said, 99% of I would say sub $80 million companies make more money without an ERP, but you might have to reorganize your process so that you don't need number 33 on your list of 35. But guess what? It gives you 10K a year and makes the system easier. You don't need to have 4 employees to run it. And so I think getting that balance requires a ton of expertise and then some energy to implement correctly. Scott, I think you're the guy in the space that really gets this the most. Scharf Consulting, you can find him at scharf.ai. Scott's a really easy guy to talk to if you're looking for counsel on how to approach your project. If you're looking for that, like that nugget that you dropped a minute ago, if we could just make the list of what we want to accomplish and what pitfalls we're trying to avoid, what pain we want to avoid in the future, we would make so many better choices about the IMSs and other softwares we picked. Scott, you're the guy that can help them with that. I really am grateful for your counsel. Hey, I do want to ask you one final question because I always ask this question. Is there a life hack or habit or rhythm that you would espouse as being, wow, this has unlocked tremendous ROI for me in my life or my business?
Yeah. Well, the one thing actually is the book that I mentioned, The Daily Stoic. So I lean more on the emotional side of things. I'm married to an accountant that's more analytical. Who's awesome. My wife's pretty amazing. But by reading that, it just provides perspective. And then saying the serenity prayer to myself anytime I feel like, wait a minute, because all the consulting I do is all about trying to control and bend the universe to my will to solve problems for businesses and challenges I've seen for other people along those lines and fixing stuff around the house or whatever else. It's that, hey, look, just step back and be human, and most entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs because can be the most empowering thing that you can do, and why I like working with them so much. But it's like reading this Daily Stoic is there. And then of course I'm into biohacking. I do my cold plunges a couple times a week, which for me is great, especially if I get a bad night's sleep. Sleep for me is like my whole focus. So that's something that I know resets me, and then I can have more energy and focus throughout the day. That is actually a lot when I'm talking in, on and out with e-commerce entrepreneurs. I'm trying to figure out what their personal routines are as well, because that is like the fundamental. What are you doing that's taking care of yourself, because you're the entrepreneur and your energy behind all the things you're doing.
Love it. Well, I'm a multitasker, so I already have the Daily Stoic in my Amazon cart over here. Thank you very much, Scott, for that recommendation. I do think the cold plunge. Now, I haven't bought the tub, dude. I do like the cold shower.
Me either. Yeah.
Okay. I hack it. You don't need to go spend the money on it if you don't want to. But Scott, this has been great. Scott Scharf. Scharf, in case you guys are listening to this, is SCHARF. Scharf.ai is his website. We'll have all of the links, Scott, to you in the show notes, whether you're looking at this on YouTube or listening to it on the podcast feeds. Dude, you're the man. I'm grateful for you. Really appreciate our friendship. Thank you again for joining ROP today.
Thank you. It's been great.
All right, guys. And for anybody who's made it 40 minutes, your life is valuable. Your time is valuable. Scott and I just appreciate it. This is we just hope that this time has been meaningful for you. We hope you can implement just a couple of nuggets that'll get you farther, faster in your business and your life. And, until we see you next week, we hope you kill it. Take care.